Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
What's going on, guys? Welcome on into Fantasy Intervention. Still got to take some time to figure out how to kind of come off of that intro. A big shout out, of course, to John for coming up with that, man. Love the intro. Love everything that you did for us over there. And love all of the quick shots, the Fantasy Six-Pack, the Nature Takes, everything that you've done for these intros. I absolutely appreciate it 100%. And yeah, tonight we actually have a very big episode because this matchup for this DFS, it's absolutely insane. It's a weird matchup. It's something where I feel like these two teams are almost identical to each other with, their defenses, with their players to an extent, but at the same aspect, at the same time, they have different skill position players, and it's almost like the same strengths and weaknesses for each team are almost mirrored, but to an extent like a polar opposite. Like you guys will hear me talk about it here in a second. But for example, we have Josh Reynolds, who is kind of like a bigger type physical target, is going to be pretty much matching up against a perfect opportunity corner on the opposite side of the field with Jamel Dean, where he could absolutely take advantage of that. Meanwhile, we have Antonio Brown, who has the wheels, who has that deep threat ability. He's going to be matched up with Williams. So Williams actually struggles with a deeper pass. So we got a bunch of stuff coming at you guys, a bunch of stuff where you guys are going to want to pull out a notebook and take notes for this matchup. Before I do, I've been very, very busy over here at Fantasy Intervention. We have a lot of stuff going on, guys. Like I'm talking about stuff that is just, piled up past what any, individual person should be able to handle, especially when it comes to getting into this industry, learning how to operate, a podcast, learning how to record, learning this stuff is very, overall, like it becomes daunting at first, but you start to learn how to operate. You start how to learn how to, multitask and learn how to edit, do all this other stuff. But Jake put up a post recently. Big shout out to Jake over there. Tobridge, he actually put up a post recently as to where he was sitting there and he was talking about how when you agree to do a podcast, right, or host a podcast, you're just not recording. You're just not a researcher anymore. You're just not somebody that, decides to type up an article and then talk about it. Like you're now an editor, a podcaster, a publisher, a producer. Oh, by the way, you also have to be an SEO expert. You have to learn how to design websites. It was a whole list of stuff. And I started laughing because I was like, dude, that's exactly how I feel like. And, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, me and a few individuals decided that, hey, we want to launch Fantasy Intervention, or in other words, Join Our Circle over there on Twitter. And yeah, it was something that was kind of like just, off a whim, like heat of the moment type thing. And this was something that I planned on launching in the offseason when I actually had more time, but I had so much support, from my team over there at Join Our Circle _ in Fantasy Intervention that I decided to go ahead and launch it. And it has been absolutely amazing. It's been a lot of work, but it's been absolutely amazing. And I honestly, there is no way in hell I'd be able to do this without my team over there. I mean, it started out with, just a few of us hanging out, in my house, me and Devin and a few other guys. And, I took it and I ran with it. And one of the first people to actually join me on this is somebody that was very small at the time. He made a big hit when he left out this, or when he ended up releasing his shit talking on the Podfather and went big time after beating him week 1 in the Scott Fishbowl. And that was Mike. Big shout out to Mike. Cause honestly, Mike, without you, man, I don't even know where I'd be at. We have side conversations, sidebars over there. And, a lot of the stuff that I'm going through, man. And it's something as to where I benefit from having you on the team so much. It's not just the Wednesday episodes. Like it's something as to where Daddy's Home FF, if you guys want to check him out on Twitter, is not only a comedic release. He's not only somebody that knows his fantasy football, but he's a great friend out there. So huge shout out to Mike. When it comes to making sure that our quick shots and everything like that go out on time and everything's edited correctly. And I get my advice for, how I want to promote certain stuff. I need to give a big shout out to Corey over there, who's helped me out tremendously. Him being able to edit, publish, produce and advertise for all the stuff that we have going on the YouTube side and on the podcast side has been absolutely amazing. Bob over there has been helping out with the website, which has been absolutely incredible. That's something where we're spending hours and hours. I was up at 6 a.m. this morning just doing research on it and stuff. And honestly, without Bob, I wouldn't even be able to get to, the first step of where we're at. So big shout out to Bob. Big shout out to Brad, of course, as well over there for the team, who's helped us out tremendously, with certain things behind the scenes, which I'm not going to mention what they are. Big shout out to Brad, of course. Steffi's come on with the injury report. Big shout out to Jeff as well. And Adam. Adam's absolutely crushing his injury takes and whatnot. You guys need to go check out the real_Adam H. And then we got Frank with his nature takes. Dave with his show sheet intelligence is absolutely flawless. Bo is now helping me out with the DFS stuff. So big shout out to Bo. Juan over there is absolutely the most criminally underfollowed person on Twitter, guys. That's at FF Juan of a kind. So big shout out to you. Cooter Doodle. You guys have not met Cooter Doodle yet unless you listen to Monday episode, but Cooter Doodle is joining us on Wednesday nights. She's going to be a co-host, and I cannot be more excited for it. I am absolutely stoked. Brand new co-host on Wednesday nights. Absolutely hilarious. And if you guys want to know, prior to week 11, what Jonathan Taylor could not achieve when it comes to his yardage, go look at your floss. Big shout out to Cooter Doodle. Nate, who's coming on there, helping me out big time with the waiver wire sheets. And of course, I already mentioned at FF John Swanson, who's been doing all of our audio stuff. Big shout out to you. Troy, we got things in the works. And James, your fantasy six pack is absolutely flawless. I love what you're doing over there with the fantasy six pack. And honestly, with everything in motion, it's tough for me to sit there and say exactly what kind of set me off on Twitter. But I have to give a big shout out to, of course, this chat that there's just so many positive people in, and it's so many people that I like to bounce ideas off of, and I get a ton of passion from. Peter Howard with his charts, absolutely amazing. He's brought me on some shows, and the guy's blown my mind. Troy King is probably one of the best people out there in the fantasy community. Absolutely love this guy. We're kind of getting started at, to an extent the same level, but this is somebody that I look up to in the fantasy community at TK or T King Mode. If you guys want to go check him out on Twitter, absolutely amazing. Josh giving some great advice. Lauren, you're absolutely amazing as well. Mike Sipes at the FF Blitz is absolutely hilarious. Love his laugh as well. I mean, there are so many people in this chat. We already mentioned Jake over there with the post that he did earlier in the week. Absolutely love Jake. We're sitting there with Faith over there, just pretty much being the mom of not just the group that we have, but fantasy football as a whole and making sure that everybody stays in check. Absolutely love Faith. We got a ton of people in the background as well. So, that contribute from time to time, such as Ben, who's giving me a bunch of great ideas. Sam, who I absolutely look up to, Dynasty Outhouse, who had me on one of his shows and it was absolutely amazing. Kane over there keeps me completely wrapped up with his chats and whatnot, and kind of, checked when it comes to making sure that I'm staying on point with everything, with his takes and what he's publishing out there. We got Michael Huff over there, who is actually going to be joining us this Wednesday. I'm very excited to have him on. J Mike, absolutely love you, man. Host over there, one of the hosts with Gabe, of course. Big shout out to Gabe as well, for Dynasty Happy Hour, or I'm sorry, for everything going on over there. We got Linda, who I look up to tremendously within the community. Matt Donnelly is one of my best friends in the community. And Katie Flower, who keeps me laughing nonstop. Fantasy Football Down Under. I mean, there are so many guys. I could go on and on and on and on about all the people that are so influencing in this community and to me as a podcaster. So big shout out to all you guys. I absolutely love it. But we're here to talk about fantasy football. I needed to get warmed up. I've been doing research today after working on my website for about 8 hours. I've been doing research for about 4 or 5 hours. So I need a little bit of something to kind of, break the ice, crack it open. It's something as to where I just needed something to kind of wake me up. So guys, really appreciate you all 100%. Big shout out to you guys. And let's keep moving. Let's keep cranking. It's something as to where I'm excited about everything going on. Oh, and by the way, big Shout out to Larry Monkey. Happy birthday. I will be on your podcast tonight. I cannot wait. But yeah, let's do this shit. Let's crank this open. Let's go ahead and break into this DFS episode. And right before I do, because I always have one more thing to add right before I break into the content side of things, guys. I want to make sure I give a big shout out over there to Thrive Fantasy. Go hashtag prop up, right? Go check out Thrive Fantasy. And when you go sign up, as long as you put in anywhere from $20 to $50, they're going to actually match whatever you put in. And for thrivefantasy.com, when you use promo code CIRCLE, right? That's where they're going to match that for you. I've got three prop bets that I went ahead and looked up for you guys. We're going to go through this real quick, and then we're going into our DFS. Thrivefantasy.com. Use promo code CIRCLE when you go to deposit. I've got 3 takes for you guys. If you don't think that Chris Godwin is going to have 3.5 receptions tonight, you are absolutely nuts. There's only been one time that he had less than 3.5 receptions, and that's when he had 3. So please go play Chris Godwin on the over for 3.5 receptions. He's going to smash tonight. He has a good matchup with Hill. Hill has been great, by the way, but this whole entire secondary is an absolute beast, so I love Godwin going forward. Suck up. Right? The kicker over there at 6.5 fantasy points. That's absolutely insane to me. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in this DFS, but there's only been 2 times that he did not do that so far in the season. Plus, the Los Angeles Rams, right? They are the 4th best when it comes to third down conversion rate. 4th best when it comes to third down conversion rate for defenses at making teams go to 4th down. Now, when it comes to, let's see, Josh Reynolds. This is a freebie because I think they messed up. If you go on to thrivefantasy.com, use promo code CIRCLE, go make a deposit anywhere between $20 and $50. They'll match it for you. We have Josh Reynolds at 46.5 receiving touchdowns. Yeah, you heard that right. 46.5 receiving touchdowns. You know, it's something as to where like we actually have, I guess, kind of like a fantasy or DFS buildup at Thrive Fantasy. So you pick 10 different things and you put them in a lineup. But yeah, like this stuff is a freebie. I already gave you 3 of the items that you guys should pick right off the bat. There are other ones that are great. Make sure you guys go check out thrivefantasy.com. Use promo code CIRCLE when making a deposit. All right, let's go ahead and hop into this DFS matchup, guys. And I want to start out with one of my favorite facts that I dug up. One of my favorite facts of this entire slate that I dug up is the fact that there's only been 4 400-yard games allowed to a wide receiver. 3 games with 2 or more touchdowns allowed to the wide receiver. 0 receivers with multiple touchdowns. 2 receivers with only 2 receivers with 10+ receptions. And by the way, they faced 10 wide receiver 1s and 5 wide receiver 2s this season. And that is the receivers versus the Buccaneers and the receivers versus the Rams through week 10. That's absolutely insane. We're talking about 4 100-yard games allowed to a wide receiver out of 19 games. 3 games out of 19 with 2 or more touchdowns allowed, period, to a wide receiver, to a collective group of wide receivers. 0 receivers with multiple touchdowns. 2 receivers, only 2 receivers with 10+ receptions. Meanwhile, they played 15 out of their 19 games. They've actually faced a wide receiver 1 or a wide receiver 2. That's crazy, guys. That's absolutely crazy. Guys and girls, I should say. There is one big difference between these 2 teams that could separate the slate and the way that I want to go, however. This is really going to kind of slant the ownership. And that's the fact that 9 touchdowns have been allowed by the Buccaneers to the wide receivers. Meanwhile, only 4 touchdowns have been allowed to the Rams. This game is going to be a defensive struggle, but there are certain areas where we can find value. It is all over the place. Value is there, right? So as we look to, try and pair these defenses in our lineup and try to create a storyline with our DFS show, right? With our DFS lineups, we're going to try and create a story. I want to break out this matchup and see if I can try and find this value. So, guys, when I go to do these DFS episodes, the first thing that I look at is the injury report, right? First off, I have to dissect the injury report. I have to see who's going to be playing, who's not playing, what the, eventual replacements could be. And honestly, there wasn't a major person outside of Andrew Whitworth that is going to be missing this game. So there aren't any obvious holes, especially at the skill set positions. period. The first thing that I do set there and I looked at, as a whole, is the fact that the Rams aren't actually 23rd up against the running back. When you go to play DFS for DraftKings, it's going to say 23rd up against running back. That's actually not the case. All the other teams have actually played, from week 11. So prior to week 11, they were actually 7th, right? 7th up against the running back position. They've been overall very stout. They've only allowed, let's see, when it comes to the Rams, they've only allowed 4 touchdowns on the ground to the running back and only 1 touchdown in the air to the running back. Since week 6, there's only been 1 game where running backs have had over 50 rushing yards. 0 games where running backs had over 30 receiving yards. They've only allowed 2 touchdowns on the ground since that point, right? Gaskin ended up having that one, but he averaged under 3 yards per carry in that contest. Alex Collins was the other one. He had under 4 yards per carry in that contest. And you guys got to keep in mind that nobody has any film on Alex Collins in I don't even know how long, right? So it's somebody that they haven't seen in a couple years. There's no way to really train for him or prepare for him. Plus, nobody thought that he would get that workload. So this is something as to where the Rams are actually very good up against the running backs. So as I go back and I try and figure out different holes in this matchup, there's nothing obvious. I mean, Cooper Kupp was something that was kind of triggering my radar a little bit. But, as for like steals or guys that I'm locking into my lineup, there wasn't anybody that really stuck out. No injuries, nobody that sucks at a certain position. Playing these defenses made sense. Suckup made sense. But then, boom, right? I got to actually dive in. And this is where it kind of triggered something as to where, like, I'm actually excited. Like, I'm stoked at what the outlook is for this. Now, this is going to surprise some people. But one of my most, I guess, intriguing plays or favorite plays of the week that is probably going to have decently low ownership is actually going to be Gerald Everett. He's not inspiring. He's not exciting. But he is in a spot to absolutely smash tonight. Both teams have been up, have been okay. They've been all right up against the tight end position. But they've had weeks where both teams have been exposed. We talk about the Buccaneers, right? 3 passing touchdowns allowed to the tight end in the past 2 games. 4 total in the past 4 games. Double-digit points in all 4 of these games that we just talked about for the past 4 to the tight end position, right? And then prior to the Panthers, right? It took the Panthers to completely ruin this because, of course, the Panthers ruin everything outside of, them actually getting a touchdown to that random dude. What's his name? Like Tim Carlson or something. Anyways, before the Panthers game, right? They had a streak running of at least 7 receptions and 50 yards allowed to the tight end in 3 consecutive weeks. In those 3 consecutive weeks, it was 14.6 points allowed to the tight end. So when we sit there and we look at Everett, right, there are a couple issues where I'm like, man, I can't play him in this lineup. I can't play him in this one. Just because the fact that only 2 games where there's been a tight end to catch a pass for the Rams. That's the number 1 red flag. On top of that, Everett only has 1 receiving, touchdown in the season. But even with Higbee in there, they've only had 2 games where a tight end scored a touchdown. They've only had 1 game where a tight end has seen more than 5 targets. I'm sorry, where Everett has only seen more than 5 targets. Meanwhile, right, Tampa Bay blitzes on 42% of the snaps. We're talking about not having Andrew Whitworth in there. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay has the 3rd most sacks in the season. So we talk about Gerald Everett having to block more often. That's something that definitely makes me nervous. But it could actually be a good thing that Tampa does blitz that often. Because the Rams, right, they've started calling plays closer to the line of scrimmage where they're kind of dumping it off. Like, for example, Cooper Kupp, who we're going to bring up here in a second, has the lowest yards per reception or yards per target he's had of his entire career. They are throwing close to the line of scrimmage. Their offensive line isn't what it used to be. They're getting forced to release the ball a lot quicker than what they have in the past. So with that being said, you can release one of these tight ends into the flat off play action fake and boom, right? You're talking about Gerald Everett potentially having, at least a touchdown minimum. He could end up having 6, 7, 8 receptions for 30 or 40 yards. I mean, we saw it up against Miami. He had 9 targets up against Miami. And if you guys don't remember, that was the game where they were sacking Jared Goff. They were getting in the backfield. They were taking, strip sacks back for touchdowns. So this is something as to where Gerald Everett at 2,800, I don't really think you can go wrong with him. I don't. Like, if you're somebody playing in a tournament, I think that Gerald Everett is a smash play. All it takes is one catch for 14 yards and a touchdown to not just hit his value and get an ROI. It's to triple his value, right? Triple his price tag. One catch for 14 yards and a touchdown triples his price tag. It's absolutely insane to me. I love Gerald Everett. Now, I will say, the thing that does make me nervous is the fact that inside the red zone, right, they love to run the ball. They have a top 5 differential in terms of running versus passing inside the red zone. So I don't absolutely love this. But the Bucks are top 10 in touchdowns allowed on the ground and bottom 10 in touchdowns allowed in the air while in the red zone. So you're talking about a team that stops the running back when they're in the red zone. Meanwhile, well, they stop the running back pretty much everywhere, but they do allow a ton of touchdowns in the red zone to the wide receivers, or at least in the air. Higbee, right, is somebody that is out snapping Everett, but I still like Everett at his price tag. If we sit there and we look at the comparison, right, Higbee actually has 1.8 more points per game, but he is 2K more expensive. If we take out this Eagles game, right, where Higbee had 3 touchdowns in a game, let's just take that out. Higbee would actually be averaging 1.3 points per game less with 0 games so far on the season in double digits. Higbee is not a play for me this week, especially with the amount of pressure that we just talked about. When we talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers putting pressure on the quarterback and blitzing. Higbee blocks far more often than Everett does. Everett is the receiving tight end. So I could see them releasing Everett into more screen passes along with, routes closer to the line of scrimmage. Meanwhile, in the red zone, I think he's going to get a touchdown this week. I think it's almost guaranteed he's going to get a touchdown. But when we talk about, pressure, putting pressure on the quarterback, this could be the perfect storm, and it's something I just brought up, right? Washington got pressure on the quarterback. The Giants got pressure on the quarterback. Miami got pressure on the quarterback. Pretty much every single time we saw this. Cooper Kupp got at least 6 targets in a game. At least 6. Every single time they bring the pressure. The only game that they faced a defense that wasn't top 12 and bringing the pressure, and Cooper Kupp did not produce, was up against the 49ers, where he actually still saw 9 targets. He just couldn't corral them in. He struggled with drops that week. Oh, it was terrible. It was so ugly. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Cooper Kupp dead in the eyes. I'm saying, baby, get me those points tonight. Get me those points. He is my smash play on the week. He is my number 1 option on the slate. He's a guy that I absolutely love. The issue with Cooper Kupp, right, is the fact that they aren't passing in the red zone near enough this season. That's why he has not been seeing the same sort of output in terms of fantasy points that we've seen in previous seasons. I mean, they've still been very good on the ground. They're good last year on the ground inside the red zone. But they were so much better in the past. It's kind of strange just to see why they're running it so often this year compared to last year. I mean, with quarterbacks with over 50 passing attempts in the red zone for 2019, Goff had the 2nd highest completion percentage, the least amount of interceptions, and the 6th most touchdowns while passing in the red zone for 2019. Let me repeat that again. With quarterbacks of over 50 passing attempts, 2019, Goff had the 2nd highest completion percentage, the least amount of interceptions, and the 6th most touchdowns inside of the red zone. Like, why are they not passing the red zone more often? Like I said, they still ran the ball successfully last year, and they're doing it very well this year. But they're running the ball 9% more often in the red zone compared to last year, which has resulted to Cooper Kupp seeing far less snaps and even far less targets. He's on track to see 2 or 3 less red zone targets this upcoming season than he did receptions last year. Less targets than he did receptions last year while in the red zone. That's absolutely nuts. If we take his receptions and we extrapolate it out, he's not even going to touch 30% of the receptions that he had from 2019 while in the red zone. He has not been getting those touchdowns. Unless he exploits this matchup this week. And I think that he can. I think you could see 6 targets this week in the red zone if they want to pass the ball a little bit more often. He's got Sean Murphy-Bunting, who, by the way, has allowed the 7th most touchdowns to the wide receiver position, while being targeted at least. And by the way, Sean Murphy-Bunting has only allowed 5 incompletions while in coverage. He's allowed 42 targets, and out of those 42 targets, he's allowed 37 receptions while in coverage. Sean Murphy-Bunting is going to struggle up against Godwin, who's pretty much proven to be, matchup proof to an extent. His injury thing isn't the same, but his matchup proof is still there from last year. So we sit there and we break it down, right? Kupp is probably, like I said, is going to be my most owned player. This is the matchup that I really want to exploit. This entire slate is kind of questionable as to where to go outside of this guy right here. I love Everett, which I'm going to talk about again here in a second, but Cooper Kupp is my smash play. Did I say Godwin earlier? Sorry, I meant Cooper Kupp. He's my smash play. He's going to be my most owned player on this entire slate, and I'm going to bank on him. Woods has got Carlton Davis, who has the 3rd best passer rating allowed for guys, at the cornerback position, who at least played 8 games. Meanwhile, Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, these are some of the guys that he's been faced up against. DJ Moore was the only player so far this season that he struggled with. Still, didn't allow a touchdown, and he allowed under 70 yards receiving to DJ Moore. Although we'll say he struggled. He really didn't struggle. Honestly, he's only allowed 2 touchdowns in the entire season, so I do not like Robert Woods. He's a complete fade for me. I might throw him in one lineup in hopes they move him into the slot for a player or two, but yeah, I'm not playing Robert Woods. Not gonna throw him into. He might be, like I said, one lineup. As for the newest hot guy on this roster, right? Everybody's talking about this dude, Josh Reynolds. So hot right now. He's got Jamel Dean. And at first, I hated Dean, right? I hated this matchup. But the more and more I look into it, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, the more I feel like Reynolds could actually be an all right play this week. Now, with Reynolds, very similar to Everett, which I told you we'd hop back to, you're most likely going to be a touchdown, but that's completely doable. I keep bringing up this red zone, completion percentage, this red zone passing, but this is pretty much what this game is going to boil down to because it's going to be such a defensive struggle. Dean has given up 3 touchdowns so far this season in the red zone. By the way, that's just over this past 2 weeks. Just over the past 2 weeks, he's given up 3 touchdowns in the red zone. Teams, they're figuring out that Jamel Dean struggles. He is super hyper athletic, right? But he struggles with this short route type of stuff. He struggles with the comebacks. He struggles with these out routes. He is super athletic, but his game is not there. There's a reason why he's so great at defending these deep balls and why he does not give up explosive plays. At the same time, his technique is not made for these short attempts. Reynolds, by the way, is 3rd on the team in red zone targets, which is more than Everett, more than Higbee, and only behind Woods and Kupp by just a couple. So it's something as to where I love Reynolds, especially since he's tied 4 touchdowns in the red zone, and 3 of his 4 targets so far have come over those last 4 weeks in the red zone. So Reynolds could absolutely end with a touchdown this week. I have him and Everett almost dead even. If this is a 20-17 type game where you're talking about very little fantasy output, you're talking about 1 touchdown, right? Could end up making this lineup happen. So Reynolds, for example, you don't need him to double up his cost. You just need him to overscore. So if I'm sitting there, right, and I'm looking for just basic points because I don't think there's going to be many put out, I'm going to play Josh Reynolds. If I'm somebody that thinks that this game could be a little bit higher scoring, there could be more fantasy output, I'm going to be playing more the Gerald Everett type role. But I'm not going to be playing very many of these 2 lineups together because like we talked about throughout this whole first segment, the Rams don't pass a whole lot in the red zone. So it's not going to be a situation where I see, there's going to be 2 touchdowns to Reynolds, 1 to Gerald Everett, or 2 to Everett and 1 to Reynolds. I think this is going to be something where I'm going to play Cooper Kupp and I'm going to play either Reynolds with him or I'm going to play Gerald Everett. Not going to be playing both. Now, as for the running backs, we keep trying to bring up how much they're going to run this ball, in the red zone and how much, the Rams love to run in the red zone, but I'm not loving this matchup. The Bucs only allowed 3 yards per carry, and the Rams are going to be in a lot of 3rd and longs. So this is kind of going to eliminate them from their production premium. And honestly, like when we look at the breakdowns, they've only had one running back so far this season get over 50 yards on the ground. That was CMC. Took him 18 carries to get 59 yards. That is brutal, guys. Like this, both the Rams and the Tampa Bay defense is absolutely insane. But Tampa Bay, they've been just punishing teams, absolutely punishing teams when it comes to them trying to run the ball on the ground against them. They have the third best when it comes to explosive plays, explosive runs allowed. They're not allowing any explosive runs. It's absolutely nuts. And honestly, they're now allowing a touchdown on just 50% of the carries by the running back, which, by the way, is okay. But it's something as where I don't want to exploit this because I don't know the upside. I don't know how often they're going to end up inside the 5 in order to get these goal line carries. It's sitting there, and if we look at how they're deploying the running back situation over there for the Rams with Henderson, right, with Brown, with Cam Akers. I mean, Cam Akers led the team in yards per carry, led the team in actually yardage, but he had 38 yards rushing on 10 carries. Henderson was getting all the red zone or all the carries inside the 5 after Malcolm Brown started the season that way, went over to Henderson, and then Brown took it over this past week and got 2 carries inside the 5. It's driving me absolutely insane. It's something I swear, if I'm going to play one of these running backs, I'm going to play the same exact lineup with, Malcolm Brown, with Henderson, and with Akers, just because I think that they all have an equal opportunity to go off. When we look at the pricing, Brown and Henderson are almost exactly equal. Meanwhile, we have Akers, who's about $2K cheaper, but he's not getting the workload that I want to see from a running back if I'm going to play some DFS. Any one of these guys can end up in the end zone, which is why I'm saying if you want to play one of them, then make sure you play them all 3. But I would say probably all 3 combined will be in about 20 to 30% of my lineups. That's it. When we look at the other side of things, it's almost the same exact story like I was talking about a second ago. The Rams on the defensive side allow a little more yards, but less touchdowns to the running back. Meanwhile, they allow slightly less receptions while allowing slightly more yards in the air to the running back. And by the way, that's by a minuscule amount. They're practically tied in almost every aspect of their defense. Without a breakaway run, which, by the way, the Rams are the 4th best in not allowing breakaway runs, neither one of these running backs, when it comes to Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones, are much of an option. I'm probably not going to play Leonard Fournette, probably in any lineups. I don't even feel like I want to play him in one, to be honest with you. I mean, his upside is capped. His points per game, or his points in each game, have been 15, 10, and 10. That's not the upside that I want to see. And he's getting the snaps, by the way. He's getting the snaps. Prior to last week, I believe he dominated the previous 2 or 3 weeks when it came to snaps to the running back position. So if I'm going to sit there and I'm going to play any running back, it's going to be Ronald Jones. If Ronald Jones gets hot, right, and if they run the ball a ton, which is, they want to pound the rock, they want to get back to being a running team, then Ronald Jones could get hot and absolutely go off for 2 touchdowns, 80 yards on the ground and probably 20 yards receiving. He could see that significant workload, especially when we include the red zone attempts. But I just don't know if I trust it in a ton of lineups. I mean, he is at least 3 in 3 of the past 5 games, right? Seeing double-digit fantasy points. So, yeah, it makes me a little bit nervous playing Jones, but I still think that he could end up producing. If I had to pick one of these running backs to play, I'm going to play Jones. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about in a little bit how Tom Brady actually thrives off the play action fake. So if you're going to play Tom Brady, you might as well play Ronald Jones with him, because the fact that Tom Brady hasn't been great when not using the play action fake as a whole. Now, as for the receiving game in this one, I feel like we are almost looking at the same exact thing like we talked about for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. We have a shutdown corner on one of the sides with Jalen Ramsey, who's going to be matched up against Mike Evans. That's not going to be pretty for Mike Evans. Ramsey is on fire this year, and he's been getting burned, by the way, with double moves. But Mike Evans isn't a double move type player. He's a go up and get the ball. Ramsey shut down Metcalf last week. It's going to happen again with Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a major fade for me this week, especially at his price. But what I want to look at, right, if I do decide to play Mike Evans, is will the Ramsey actually shadow Mike Evans, or will he just stay on the side of the field that he feels more comfortable on because of Antonio Brown? Typically with Mike Evans and Antonio Brown, they're not lining up on the same side of the field. So will Jalen Ramsey, when Antonio Brown comes to that side of the field, will Jalen Ramsey stick with Mike Evans, or will they leave Williams on Mike or on Antonio Brown? I am sitting there and thinking that he is most likely going to shadow Evans, but if you just have a little bit of a hunch where you could see Evans matched up on Darius Williams, who, by the way, is only 5'9", then Evans could absolutely come down with a couple touchdowns and probably a couple big plays. So, like I said, he's a major fade for me, but I got to fit him into one lineup just to make sure I don't fuck up too bad. Now, when we talk about Darius Williams, he's pretty much looking like the same exact version of Jamel Dean, just struggling with different weaknesses, meanwhile succeeding with different strengths. He graded out like a champ over there. Like, he's actually grading out better so far at PFF than Jalen Ramsey is. But you have to keep in mind, he hasn't faced anybody. The best competition he's had so far this year is David Moore and Darnell Mooney. Like, when they are the best wide receivers you've faced all season, you're going to look good. He's likely going to be matched up with Antonio Brown. Like we said, he's 5'9". His skill set just matches up better, but it's something else where he's not the fastest player. He's not the most athletic player. So he's going to have to get safety coverage over the top. So with Antonio Brown, if he sees single coverage, one-on-one coverage, Tom Brady's willing to take that shot. We've seen it over the past couple weeks. Tom Brady hasn't been great with it, but all it takes is one or two plays. So Antonio Brown is still a play for me, very similar to Josh Reynolds. Not going to be playing him a whole lot, but I will have him in a few lineups, especially where I don't have Gronk, which we'll hop onto that. But first, before I do hop onto that, I want to be talking about Godwin. Godwin, very similar to Cooper Kupp, is matchup proof. So I'm going to be playing him. You know, he's going to be matched up with Hill, and Hill's been very good so far in the season. But when it comes to the volume that Godwin gets, you're talking about 10 targets. You're probably talking about 7 receptions. And he's probably going to finish up with 80 yards, but he could also have that touchdown. I don't like Godwin as much as I do Cooper Kupp, but I'm still going to have him in a good amount of lineups this week. Now, let's go ahead and bounce over the tight ends. And like we were talking about with Gronkowski. Kenny Young, who's the linebacker over there, he's been covering the majority of the tight ends, has been one of the worst, if not the actual worst, linebacker in coverage so far this season. Not only has he been terrible, but his size is going to be a tremendous mismatch up against Rob Gronkowski. We're talking about Kenny Young being 6'1". Gronk is going to be a monster over him, and Gronk actually succeeds and does very well up against smaller mismatches. Cameron Brate, he's the dart throw, but I don't like him as much. When it comes to looking at Gronk, though, I'm not going to be playing him with Antonio Brown. I'm not going to do it because I feel like they're either going to bracket Gronk over the middle or they're going to bracket Antonio Brown on the outside. It just depends on how, I guess, comfortable they feel with Darius Williams over there. So this is something as to where very similar to how I have Cooper Kupp matched up with Reynolds or with Gerald Everett. I'm also going to have Chris Godwin matched up with Gronk or Antonio Brown. I'm most likely not going to have them both in the same lineup. I want to see those one-on-one matchups. I want to see those opportunistic, times. And by the way, Gronk has taken advantage of those. I mean, one of these guys is bound to just hammer one off, and I actually like Gronk a little bit more than I like Antonio Brown. He has 4 touchdowns and 8 red zone targets over the last 5 games. And obviously his targets have dropped off a little bit since Antonio Brown came to town. But in the red zone, man, this guy is an absolute monster. Absolute monster. I'm hoping he gets at least 1 touchdown tonight, but I could see 2. Now, I didn't bring up a few of these wide receivers, which some of you guys might be a little bit curious as to why I'm not mentioning some of these wide receivers. Some of you guys might be a little bit curious. And it's because I feel like they're just a waste of time. I mean, we have in place what these wide receivers on each team should look like. So I don't want to play a backup. I don't want to play a guy that's getting 5 snaps, 6 snaps, 9 snaps, especially guys that don't see high volume targets. I mean, maybe the best outlook over here might be Scotty Miller if they decide to throw him in and he gets a long bomb, a deep pass. But I don't like Van Jefferson. I don't like Scotty Miller. I don't like Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson. Sorry, guys. I'm a little bit tired. I don't like Watson. I don't like Tyler Johnson, right? It's just they're not getting enough work. We have the primary receivers. And unless you're playing 30 or 40 different lineups where you can afford to play each one of these guys, I'm not doing it. There's a good chance that it's going to take an injury to roll these guys out because neither one of these teams especially now with the injury to Whitworth. They're not going to be playing 4 wide receiver sets. They're not going to do it. The running backs can slide in the slot if they need to. They're not going to roll out any of these guys. Even, LaShawn McCoy, I feel like is going to be a waste of money. I would much rather opt to go with like a Cameron Brate as a shot in the dart or a dart throw. I'd much rather, I don't know. There's not too many guys I like as dart throws in this game. In fact, I don't really like the offensive options. I mean, it's something as to where I'm going to be playing a ton of the defenses and a ton of the kickers, along with a couple of these studs. But either way, I'm not wasting my money on these shot in the dark, complete dart throws. The slate this week is not forcing you to do this. Normally we have like this slate where you're seeing guys like 3 or 4 guys minimum over 10K. You're seeing all the rest of these guys higher than 9K. But I put together a lineup earlier today that had, let's see, I actually have it, I think, pulled up right here. Yeah, I've got Cooper Kupp in the bonus, Jared Goff, Gerald Everett, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Rob Gronkowski. Like, that's absolutely insane. It's a cakewalk for a lineup. These guys are all more expensive outside of Gerald Everett because there's no prime option because these defenses are so good. You can play all the offensive options in this lineup at the top end of the pay scale and not have to really worry about it. You don't have to play that guy that's 200 or 500 or 600 or whatever the dart throw price is. I think the Gerald Everett is cheap enough as where you can get away with a top end lineup. So I'm not going to be playing these deeper dart throws this week. I'm just going to stay away from that, save my money. And if you want to do that and just play cash, I don't blame you. But it's something as to where I believe 100% that it's going to be not a chalky type week, but a week where the studs go off and we don't have to worry about these dart throws in the background. As for the quarterbacks, who I didn't bring up, these lineups, like we talked about, are cheap enough to make them work. But I personally am only going to be playing probably one quarterback in each lineup, depending on what side I'm leaning between what story that I'm telling. Sure, I will have a couple with Tom Brady and Jared Goff. That will definitely happen. It's not like I'm saying, don't do that. But for me, I want to try and find the value on one side or the other and hope that the running backs dominate touches or dominate touchdowns on the other side. That's how I want my counterbalance to play out. And certain weeks, it's like super advantageous where it's going to be a blowout. That running back is going to get the touches and stuff. This isn't one of those weeks. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring game. And so that's going to end up resulting in a ton of volume going to the running backs. Now, with that being said, if it is a high-scoring game, you're still going to be in good shape because guess what? The draw is going to open up, right? You're going to have some explosive plays from the running back. There are certain situations that are going to happen as to where it is advantageous to have a complete loaded side on one with the running back on the other. But I really like it this week for a different reason. I will say, however, that when we break it down with my Brady lineups that I've been looking at, I want to take a shot on Brady with his running backs. Tom Brady has not been good so far this season outside of the play action fake. He succeeds. I think he's third overall. Let me look at it real quick. Yeah, he has the third best completion percentage off the play action. Meanwhile, his red zone completion percentage is 26th. His deep ball completion percentage is 24th. His pressured completion percentage is 24th. And his clean pocket completion percentage is 21st. That's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. Even his catchable target rate is 23rd. So I don't love what's going on over there with Tom Brady. And if they're going to succeed, I think it's going to happen with a running back getting a few big plays and the Rams having to step up and kind of pack that box, meanwhile opening up big plays for, Antonio Brown. One of my favorite lineups this week, which will be more of a contrarian lineup, will feature Tom Brady, will feature most likely Ronald Jones. You'll have possibly Godwin, and then run it back with a couple of the big-time threats over there, catching the ball for the Rams. Anyways, guys, that is fill out our episode. I do want to cover real quick because somebody did ask in the chat that Woods, right, is not a play this week up against Carlton Davis. There's not too many different opportunities where I see a big-time return from Woods. Carlton Davis has been absolutely nasty. He's the third best cornerback on the season so far this season when it comes to our passer rating allowed. So yeah, Woods is not a play for me this week. He's a little bit too sporadic as well. Like I said, you need to play him in one lineup, but that's it. Anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in once again. If you guys want to go check out my content, you guys can go check it out at linktr.ee/fantasy intervention. Once again, that's linktr.ee/fantasy intervention. If you guys want to check out our content, check out our group. Go check out Join Our Circle _ at Join Our Circle _ on Twitter and on Facebook. On Facebook, we are at Fantasy Intervention. That's right, facebook.com/fantasy intervention. Who would have thought? Anyways, guys, make sure you guys go subscribe on our YouTube page, go subscribe on our Periscope, everything like that. And thank you guys for listening. But more so than ever, thank you guys for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out of here. Good luck tonight, guys.